What's up, Nets fans? Welcome to the Brooklyn Buzz. I'm your host, Nick Fay. No Jack Manuel today, but we do have Will Jackson. What's up, Will?
What's up, guys?
Will, obviously, last night did not go as we wanted, staying up late on the East Coast to finish the game. The Nets lost in double OT to Portland, 148-144. Self-inflicted loss in my eyes. But before we break it down, quick reminder, check us out, iTunes, Blog Talk Radio, OTGBasketball.com, NetsRepublic.com, and YouTube. But Will, talking about that loss, 148-144. What was the biggest issue in your eyes for the Nets last night? What, caused this loss?
I think we out-rebounded them, but, the biggest issue for me was the late turnovers in the game.
Yeah, late turnovers. And this, I almost want to combine it into late turnovers and bad decisions because it was all kind of combined in a way. Late turnovers, we took care of the ball most of the game, but then we ended the game with 16 turnovers and Portland only had 3. Obviously, you're going to lose most games when you lose a turnover battle by 13. But then the bad decisions, some bad shots. Obviously, D'Angelo had some turnovers, and then Spencer Dinwiddie had some bad fouls.
Yeah, it was just a rough game when it came to the late fourth quarter and overtime.
And that's what's, is kind of terrible because the Nets put themselves in a position to really win this game, and they just pretty much blew it at the end. We'll talk about the free throws too. 31 of 44, 13 missed free throws against a really good team like Portland on the road. It's probably not going to cut it, and it's going to end up getting you an L.
Yeah, free throws is something that we've talked about a lot lately.
Too much.
Too much, yeah. D'Angelo Russell hasn't been hitting them lately. A lot of the team hasn't been hitting them. And free throws can make a huge difference in any game.
Let's hypothetically say at this point, they hit most of their free throws in overtime. If they knock down 2 or 3 more free throws, they're walking away with a win in regulation.
Yeah, D'Angelo shot 50% from the line. That's just not going to cut in the game.
Exactly, and that's it's a little bit of an outlier, but like we talked about in the past, Joe Harris 4 or 6, things like that is just kind of weird. You don't expect it. I think it's like we talked about. It's a little bit contagious. Guys are just missing these free throws. Now, talking about D'Angelo, who had a really good start to the game, what did you think about his play in overtime?
It was an up and down performance in overtime. I think that he did carried us in that first overtime period just with the shots he was making. But other than that, just the turnover at the end of the fourth quarter really just hurt us.
Yeah, that fourth quarter turnover at the end of the game, obviously, I think if the Nets just held it out, Portland would have had only 3 seconds to, take a shot to win it possibly, and the Nets were up at 2 at that point. So if they had scored in that situation, it pretty much sealed the deal. Thought obviously that turnover really hurt. It kind of, Jack and I were talking in the DMs a little bit. It kind of reminded me a little bit of that New Orleans game. Obviously, the turnover wasn't quite as bad, but I think you do need to do a better job protecting the ball in that situation because it literally is one of just the worst things that can happen is a live ball turnover in that situation.
Yeah, you had the game in your hands. You're up 10 halfway through the fourth quarter, and then just boom, turnovers at the end of the fourth quarter. You have to hold on to the ball. I just don't know what else to say.
What did you think about Dinwiddie? Dinwiddie's probably one of the most intelligent players on the Nets, and to foul at the end of regulation and then foul at the end of double OT where they had a chance to win it. You think he was just in a funk last night?
The foul at the end of the fourth quarter on Seth Curry just pissed me off.
And they got lucky. He missed one.
Yeah, as soon as he missed that free throw, I jumped up and down in excitement, basically. But, yeah, that just pissed me off. He's obviously, we know that he's one of the smartest players on the team. He's gifted in terms of his talent, but he just got to be smarter there.
Yeah, especially I felt like, the one in regulation really sucked, but the one in double OT where they hit all those threes to give themselves a chance to win it and then go to foul like that, it just was such a letdown.
Yeah, you can't do that.
And before we go any further, obviously in overtime, Josef Nurkic suffered a very serious leg/ankle injury. He did have surgery today. We wish him the best. We know how it feels. LeVert had something similar. Wasn't quite as bad, but, it was rough to see any player go down like that.
Yeah, NBA TV didn't show the replay, and I'm kind of grateful for that because from what I hear, it's just really, really awful. Prayers up for him, and like Nick said, we've been through it, but I hope for a full recovery.
Yeah, and you don't want to see that happen ever. And at 1 a.m., it kind of just throws you for a loop seeing somebody's, foot pointed the wrong way. But like Will said, hopefully the best for him. Talking about bigs, though, Jared Allen, not a great game. Ed Davis, a good game, but he did foul out.
Yeah, I keep making this point over and over again, but the Nets need another big body on the team for situations like this where both players foul out in the end of the game.
Exactly. It could happen in the playoffs if you get matched up in a series against a team like Philly and you got to deal with Joel Embiid. Easily could foul out one of your guys or get yourself in a situation. Jared Allen obviously fouled out in overtime as well, so they had to play Jared Dudley there. DeMarre Carroll and Jared Dudley as your front court is going to be rough going against any big team. So it'll be interesting to see if they sign anybody moving forward? Do you think they will, or are you just hoping they will?
I think like the most logical thing would be for them to bring up Alan Williams. I mean, I know Long Island's in the playoffs now, and he's probably going to be on that team. But I mean, when Long Island's not playing, I think he should be on the team.
Yeah, it'll be something to keep an eye on because what I understand is two-way players cannot play in the playoffs unless they sign an NBA contract.
Huh? It's interesting.
So they'd have to make a decision. And obviously, there's been a lot of talk about Theo Pinson getting that last spot. It'll see if the Nets really care about winning now or they'd take the risk of bringing those two guys in. If they don't match up against Philly, they probably can get away with it against a team like Toronto.
Yeah, I mean Toronto doesn't have the physical bigs like Philly does with Embiid and Marjanovic, but
Yeah, and if you got to play, Rondé against Serge Ibaka for some situation, or even against a Marc Gasol who's just not as dominant as he obviously used to be, so I think they get away with it depending on matchup. I wouldn't even be surprised if they waited to like the last minute because they probably want to give that spot to Theo Pinson.
yeah, I would imagine it'd be Theo Pinson at this point.
Yeah, and obviously you like the energy he brings on the bench. He's had some good moments as well too. Now, we talked about turnovers a little bit from the Nets side. One thing I think is concerning that we don't discuss enough is the Nets forcing turnovers. Like I said, Portland only had 3 turnovers in a game that went to double overtime.
Yeah, I mean that's insane when you think about the amount of turnovers a team commits averagely in a night. You have to create more turnovers to win ball games.
Yeah, I think the zone defense helps but at times, I think some is the Nets just need to pick up the intensity defensively. And talking about one guy who does bring some defense, LeVert, I thought had a good showing. In the first quarter, he still looked a little rough, but then he started to bounce back, kind of get in his groove. Scored 16 points and had 7 assists.
Yeah, I mean the offense is starting to come back for him. He had a pretty decent night from the field, 62%. I mean you can see him starting to finish a little bit more at the rim. You hope that he can continue this throughout the rest of the season because the Nets really need him to get going if they want to win some more ball games.
Yeah, I think Kenny could have even considered playing him at the end of the fourth quarter when Joe Harris was really struggling. Joe did hit a couple buckets, but I wouldn't have been opposed to seeing Harris out there because he played so well. Obviously, you still want to see a consistency for a couple more games, but it gives the Nets a nice luxury where you're almost guaranteed that 2 of the 3 of, Caris LeVert, Spencer Dinwiddie, and D'Angelo Russell, 2 of those 3 are going to play well, and you're going to have a really good chance to win a game.
Right. I think the thing that you said about Joe Harris, I think the reason Kenny Atkinson wants to play him so much is because they don't have Alan Crabb out there. And after Alan Crabb, Joe Harris is pretty much the only lights-out three-point shooter the Nets have, so they really probably just want him out there for the spacing.
Yeah, I would think that Kenny also wanted them for the spacing, but not only that, I think he wants that finishing lineup to get more consistent and feel better playing together. And I think that lineup is Spencer Dinwiddie, D'Angelo Russell, Joe Harris, DeMar Carroll, and Jared Allen. That's what he probably wants to go with. We'll see if that remains the case for the rest of the year.
Speaking of DeMar Carroll, do you like him starting?
Yeah. We did see that starting lineup again. So DeMar again starting. I thought against the Lakers, I felt like it was more of a matchup thing. He could probably say the same argument against Portland, but I wouldn't be surprised if he started DeMar the rest of the year.
Yeah, I think that's probably going to be the plan just because he's more physical than Kurucs at the 4, and Kurucs plays pretty well at the 3.
It gives him a lot of versatility, too. You can switch between those two guys, and it just gives you something different. And Carroll's a type, he had a nice night from 3, 4, 7. You just bring some of those that veteran leadership you kind of need out there with your starting lineup that the Nets don't really have, especially if this is a lineup they want to start in the playoffs.
Yeah, him and Jared Dudley, that veteran leadership, I mean, time and time again, it shows how valuable it is.
Jared Dudley, really nice game last night. 15 points, 6 of 8 from the field, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 blocks, did a lot of the small things. Probably had a good shot at forcing a triple OT because he got a jump ball.
I thought that was a jump ball.
Yeah, it definitely was, and I think the only reason they didn't change it is because the rules wouldn't allow him.
Yeah, I mean, I was surprised to also see him throughout the game, finishing at the rim a lot more, just driving to the rim and getting those layups to go in.
Forget that he can actually make layups. It's like, oh, this old guy's not going to go in there.
Yeah, I was watching NBA TV, and the commentators there were just so surprised at what he was doing. They're like, Jared Dudley's doing this?
Yeah, hey, give him props. He knows what to do. He plays the game the right way. And a lot of screens, a lot of stuff he does under the radar. One thing he does that I absolutely love is he's one that actually boxes out. Him and Ed Davis are probably the most consistent guys that are in the paint trying to box somebody out.
I mean, who would have thought boxing out gets you a rebound? I never would have guessed.
Man, I wish Jared Allen would learn that. I mean, I think that's one area he struggles with is Jared is kind of always trying to jump out for the rebound, and he doesn't necessarily always put a body on somebody. Obviously, at his size, it's a little bit more difficult.
Yeah, I think that he needs to gain a little bit more, on the muscle standpoint with that.
Yeah, especially lower body strength. I think that's an area where, you're going to get a strong base to kind of find some space.
Yeah.
But what do you think about Joe Harris struggling? Has this been something that you've noticed since post All-Star break? Obviously, we can talk about this because Jack's not on or he'd kill us both. But 4-13 from the field, 1-6 from three, 4-6 from the free throw line. Do you feel like he's in a little bit of a funk?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you can see it. He's not been shooting the best since the break. I mean, he still leads the league in 3-point percentage because he is Joe Harris. But no, I think that we do see the struggles. 1-6 tonight. I think he didn't only think his only three came in that second overtime with the Hail Mary three, basically.
Yeah, where you're kind of like free and you're not really thinking quite as much. It would be nice to get him going now. Do you think it's more so Harris is in a funk or the Nets need to do a better job of getting him more open shots?
I think that it's a mix of the two. I think like they're not setting as many off-ball screens for him as they have in the past, and then I think the other thing is he kind of misses Allen Crabbe out there just as a second 3-point shot that the other team has to defend just as much.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a little bit of both. I also think you add in a third option too is other teams are just giving him a lot more attention and they're really making an effort to make sure he doesn't get a touch on the perimeter.
Ever since he won that 3-point contest, man.
Yeah, hey, it's not always a positive, I guess, from the scouting perspective. Now, we mentioned Jared Allen struggled. What did you think of Rodion's game?
Rodion's he only played in 18 minutes, so it's not a huge sample size to judge his game from, but he only shot 2-7. I think that he's not been in a funk, but he hasn't been as lights out as he's been earlier in the season.
Yeah, I think he struggled a little bit in terms of shooting. He had a couple open shots that he usually knocks down. And just like Portland has a lot of veterans, so I think it was kind of putting him in a couple bad situations. And there's a couple, there's a couple learning moments for him in that game where I think D'Angelo Russell got caught on a Amino screen, and Rodion's was too late to step up on Dame, and Dame knocked down the three.
Yeah, I also think it was a matchup thing that Kenny just wanted to go to Jared Dudley a little bit more. Jared Dudley played 35 minutes. I think Aminu provided a bit of a challenge for Krooks in the game.
Now, do you think Rondé should have saw minutes last night, or are you happy with the rotation?
I think Rondé hasn't gotten any minutes since the Sacramento game, and I think that he probably deserves to get a few more minutes. But I'm fine if the rotation's working, but if it's not, like it wasn't in the Sacramento game, I think he's a nice player to get in there.
Yeah, somebody to kind of break it up, bring you some energy. And like we kind of talked about earlier, this wasn't really a bad game from the Nets. Like they played a good game most of the regulation, and they were down to the wire with a good team in Portland. And they just kind of lost control of the game, not knocking down free throws, lack of turnovers. Not only did Portland, like you mentioned, the Nets actually out-rebounded them, but it felt like Portland was getting a ton of loose ball fouls. So the Nets just weren't doing a great job protecting and finishing off the possessions defensively.
Yeah, there were a couple of questionable calls there at the end of the game that we could get into if you wanted. But
yeah, overtime, I thought, I didn't mind the refs most of the game, but I felt like in overtime there was a couple questionable calls. One thing that always drives me up nuts is like the Nets were called for 3 moving picks, and there was no moving picks called on Portland. And we all know Nurkic and Cantor.
He moved on every pick. On every pick.
So that was kind of alarming in a sense. But overall, I think the refs probably played a part in it, but it was the Nets' fault they lost this game.
Yeah, 100%. It was. I mean, you have to do better when you have a 10-point lead late in the fourth quarter.
Exactly, especially when you just have the chance to, force overtime. The Nets dodged a bullet where, Seth Curry missed that free throw. But Will, anything else you want to touch on before we get out of here?
Yeah, I mean, I think looking forward to the Philly game, just the biggest thing is, I mean, obviously you want to win because Orlando had a big win last night against Philly. Hopefully Ben Simmons dose of flu at that point. We'll see what happens. But I think hopefully like putting up a good fight in that game will be really important for our confidence.
Yeah, obviously that's the end of the road trip. Portland was the end of the Western Conference portion. Now we're going against Philly. Then we have Boston. So it's going to be a tough stretch for the Nets, who are tied technically with Detroit, who Detroit has a slight lead in terms of win percentage, I believe. So they're in 6th, but game behind wise, it's the same. Nets are in 7th. Miami only a game behind. Orlando a game and a half behind. But Miami and Orlando play each other tonight.
Yeah, and it's big that we have the tiebreakers over most of these teams. Obviously, we play Miami in the last game of the season, which will be a huge game.
Yeah, it'll come down to a lot. So, obviously, if the Nets get in the playoffs, they deserve it. If they don't, it's their fault for games like Portland, games like the Pelicans we talked about earlier. Plenty of games in the season where they just blew opportunities to get a W.
Memphis game.
You know what? I've advocated for this all year. I blame the Memphis game more so on the refs.
Oh, the Jaren Jackson Jr. 4-point play. I mean,
yeah, and then D'Angelo Russell fouled at the end of that game where they got a steal, but really he was fouled. But hey, we could do another entire podcast on that. Will, Always a pleasure talking Nets. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Check us out, iTunes, Block Talk Radio, OTGBasketball.com, NetsReport.com, and YouTube.